I'm so excited to take you home, new pup. I can't wait to get you settled in and introduce you to your new brother and sister. I have to think about what to name you, what to feed you, and if I want to kennel train you. So many decisions to make.
You also need to set up your guardianship if you want of your new ward.
What do you mean, guardianship of my new ward?
I'm a prominent member of an animal rights group, and we believe a car is a piece of property, but a dog is a member of the family. States allow animals to be included in trusts, and several states require courts to consider animals' interests in custody disputes. No animal should be used as a pawn in someone's divorce, and we urge all courts to apply the same best interest standards used in child custody cases to any dispute over cats and dogs.
Well, that's great and everything, but I don't plan on getting into any legal disputes with anyone. So why should I be a guardian and call my dog my ward?
When you adopt the term guardian as opposed to owner, you are specifying that you believe that animal guardianship is a better reflection of a human's relationship and responsibility towards animal companions. You recognize an animal as a separate and unique entity deserving respect. By viewing animals as something more than property, you are shifting the focus from the mindset of ownership interest to what is in the best interest of the individual animal. Unlike with ownership, animals do not belong to their guardians. At best, guardians have limited or temporary possession as a trustee for the beneficiary or the ward. The ward in this case is the animal. The relationship between the guardian and the ward is one of trust. It's a fiduciary relationship that obligates the guardian to work for the ward with a single-minded loyalty to the exclusion of personal gain. Applying the concept of guardianship law to animals requires the guardians to manage the estate of the animal, and in doing so, will be required to use ordinary care and diligence.
This sounds like so much legal stuff again.
Converting from animal ownership to guardianship is more than semantics. To fully recognize the new relationship between humans and animals, laws must change accordingly. Many animals are suffering at the hands of incompetent, destitute, negligent, or abusive people. Some dogs are left on heavy chains and live outdoors in terrible weather, and others die in dogfighting rings. Outdoor cats have been shot, set on fire, trapped, or drowned by cruel people. While some animals may be lucky enough to be loved and treated like a member of the family, many others experience nothing but suffering, abuse, and sadness. Some states do have legal precedents that protect animals from neglect, but too many states still lack the legal statutes to protect animals. One of the legal benefits for the animal of guardianship is that the guardian may be removed for malfeasance. Some of these reasons include a failure to use ordinary care and diligence, failing to perform their guardianship duties, showing an incapacity to perform their duties, being convicted of a felony, or having an interest that is adverse to the performance of their duties. This is a much higher standard than what is currently applied to animal owners.
Are there any organizations that work to define and promote the concept of animal ownership?
There are many animal rights organizations like PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and the ASPCA, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, work towards promoting animal guardianship. These groups do wonderful work in sharing the ideology of the animal rights belief system. However, the primary group involved with promoting animal guardianship is the Animal Legal Defense Fund.
What does the Animal Legal Defense Fund argue is the current legal status of animals in the United States?
The current legal system differentiates between property and legal personhood. One way of elevating an animal's legal status is to recognize them as a legal person. There are some non-human persons under the law. Some corporations and ships are considered persons for legal limited purposes. There is also a growing environmental movement that defines entities of nature, such as rivers, with legal personhood to provide means of protection.
Wow. I guess if ships, corporations, and rivers can be granted legal personhood, animals should absolutely be designated that status.
A few rulings outside of the United States have granted individual great apes with legal personhood. We are lucky enough to live in California because our state has recently passed legislation providing guidance to courts regarding the interests, well-being, and care of companion animals in divorce proceedings. California is the most recent of 3 states, including Alaska and Illinois, to pass such legislation. In states where animal ownership is still consulted, the companion animal usually goes to the person who paid for the adoption or purchase fee. Some states have additionally passed legal legislation that acknowledges animal sentience. The Animal Defense Legal Fund helped draft and pass a law in Oregon in 2013 that recognizes animals as sentient beings capable of experiencing pain, stress, and fear. The United Kingdom now formally recognizes animals as sentient beings by law. This is wonderful news, as the French philosopher René Descartes falsely proliferated the belief that animals don't feel pain or have minds, as they have no pineal gland. He maintained that animals cannot reason and that only humans are conscious. He argued that only humans have minds and souls, and therefore the only beings deserving of compassion.
I'm happy animals are finally being recognized as sentient beings.
Yes, and by adopting an animal from the local animal shelter, you have shown that you are like-minded with the animal rights philosophy. You have already made a step in the right direction and should now register yourself and your new dog in the statewide registry of guardians or conservators. While the legal status of companion animals remains unresolved, your registry as guardian of your newly adopted dog helps recognize that the cultural and social relationships humans have with animals clearly transcends that of property and is better reflected by the term guardian than the term owner. We owe it to our companion animals to make their lives as comfortable and fulfilling as possible.
All right. Well, my new doggo seems to be getting anxious and I'm ready to get him home. I will think about everything you have told me today, but I would like to do my own research. Thank you so much for informing me.
You're welcome. It was nice to meet you. I hope you make the correct decision in regarding the health and happiness of your new family member.
Thank you. I will. Hey, Khalil. I had a long day. I just adopted a new puppy, and right when I left, I encountered an animal rights activist.
Well, what did the animal rights activist say?
The animal rights activist basically asked me if I was going to be the owner or the guardian of my new puppy, and I didn't know the difference. So she explained to me what it means to be the guardian of an animal and what an animal rights activist advocates for. I'm still confused as to what's the difference between being an owner versus being the guardian of my puppy, because they seem kind of similar.
Well, lucky for you, I advocate for animal welfare, and I can explain to you what being the owner of an animal means.
The woman I talked to said she's an animal rights activist and explained it. What does it mean to advocate for animal welfare?
Well, advocating for animal welfare means to care about the general health and well-being of animals. Being an animal welfare activist myself means that I want to improve conditions for animals that are reliant on human care. Animals are our responsibility and need to be looked at properly and treated accordingly. When taking care of an animal, humans have obligations to humanely take care of them. That means providing shelter, feeding them a nutrition balanced diet, getting veterinary care when needed, providing both emotional and physical care, because animals have needs outside of just feeding them and protection.
Thank you for explaining what an animal welfare activist is.
Yeah, no problem. I know that took some time to explain, but are there any other questions that you had?
Yes, I was still wondering what it means to be an owner of my pet.
I actually almost forgot that was originally your question because I went on a tangent about what it means to be an animal welfare activist. But being an animal welfare activist correlates to being an owner and not being a guardian. Being an owner is a lot more complicated than you would think. Being an owner has like a lot of legal obligations. Owning an animal means that the animal doesn't have rights, but being its guardian means that the animal would have legal rights, which can subject the owner to lawsuits filed by a third party on behalf of the animal. Like owners generally have access and authority over the release of their animal's medical records, but for guardianship, when considering the best interest of the animal, a veterinarian can choose not to release medical records of your animal if they deem it's not in the best interest to do so. Do you have any questions so far?
I'm still not sure if I would like to be the owner or guardian of my puppy. So can you please tell me more?
Yeah, of course. Let's say that your puppy damages something in your household that was very expensive. Like insurance would not be able to cover the damage cost if you're its guardian, because under guardianship laws, the animal is technically no longer considered property. It sucks that if you're an owner then the animal is your property, but in the eyes of the law, people should and do take care of their property. So in a sense, it's for the well-being of your animal.
I don't know that I like the sound of my animal having no rights.
Just because your animal is legally considered property without rights, it doesn't mean that your animal isn't protected by law. Animals may be seized or impounded without the owner's consent when there are reasonable grounds to believe such is required to protect the health or safety of the animal. Animal owners also cannot be cruel, abusive, or relinquish their responsibility just because they feel like it. There are laws set up for both owners and guardians to protect the animals, but there are major differences between them.
The animal rights activist did go into detail about the guardianship side and minor details about the ownership side. I did not know that you were an animal welfare activist. Thank you for going out of your way to explain all of this to me. I think I have a better understanding now of both sides about what I'm going to do, but I feel I need to talk to my veterinarian before I make a conclusive decision.
That's no problem. I'm all for helping people learn more about animals. If you have any more questions, don't be afraid to call me. I do think talking to your veterinarian is a great idea. So your animal health care provider will have an educated and more informed opinion on this topic.
Thank you so much, Khalil. Have a good night.
No problem. Have a good night.
Good night.
Hello, Lauren. It's great to see you again. I see you adopted a new baby.
Hello. Yes, I love him already.
Aw. It looks like we are in for a wellness exam today, and I also see here that you have some questions about companion animal ownership versus companion animal guardianship.
I do. I ran into an animal rights activist outside of the shelter where I adopted my new dog. She brought the ethical issue of animal ownership versus animal guardianship to my attention. She explained the animal rights perspective in regard to animal guardianship, but I felt her argument was very one-sided. I have a friend, Khalil, who is very informed about animal issues, so I called him when I got home and got my new dog settled. It turns out he is an animal welfare activist, so he presented the other side of the argument. I thought it would be a good idea to speak to you about the issue, and Khalil agreed.
You came to the right place. I would be happy to talk with you about this subject. As a licensed veterinarian in the United States, I am a member of the American Veterinary Medical Association. As a veterinarian, I am a proponent of animal welfare, and the AVMA traditionally takes an animal welfare stance on animal ethics issues.
Okay, so you would probably agree with my friend Khalil on animal issues.
Yes, most likely. Animal welfare means how an animal is coping in the conditions in which it lives. An animal is in a good state of welfare if it is healthy, comfortable, well-nourished, safe, able to express innate behavior, and is not suffering from states such as pain, fear, and distress. Good animal welfare also includes regular veterinary treatment and disease prevention, appropriate housing, nutrition, humane handling, and humane slaughter. The AVMA has actually developed animal welfare principles that serve to guide its policies and actions in regards to an animal welfare issue.
What is the AVMA's official stance on animal ownership versus guardianship?
The AVMA recommends that guardian not be adopted, even to semantically describe the relationship between humans and their animals. Guardian is a legal term with significant legal implications and repercussions.
What is the reasoning behind taking this stance?
Well, animal guardianship reduces the rights of owners and has the possibility of placing them under financial strain. When it comes to veterinary care, animal owners will have less authority and fewer treatment options. The required treatment can exceed the financial ability of the guardian, and yet they will be required to pay. This could in turn result in more animal abandonments.
Oh, that's a big negative.
And I'm so sorry, I said animal owners, but I did mean animal guardians will have less authority and fewer treatment options.
Okay.
Another downside of animal guardianship is that guardians may be required to provide annual guardianship reports. If the report isn't satisfactory or for some reason isn't filed, the animal could be taken away from the guardian.
I certainly don't want that. I just adopted him.
Animal guardianship in general blurs the lines of medical treatment ability. A veterinarian's responsibilities become unclear when a guardian's direction is contrary to the best interests of the animal. A veterinarian may be required to go to court to obtain judicial determination of whether their or the guardian's direction is the appropriate course of action. This could slow down much needed treatment for the animal, as cases involving animals are likely to be a lower priority than those involving humans. It will also be an added legal fee for the guardian of the animal. Veterinarians may not be able to prescribe controlled substances for an animal in need if they have a guardian as well. Current law assumes animals are owned and that owners administer them as prescribed to the animals. Guardianship also creates questions about the payment of services for your animal, as previously stated. Overall, animal guardianship is a heavier financial responsibility, and with so many animals in need of good homes, we need to minimize as many barriers as possible.
It does sound like that's a mess for you and me. Are there any more ways that animal guardianship can affect me?
Yes, traveling with your ward can be very difficult. Service providers may have an obligation to prevent transport of your ward from a guardianship state to an ownership state. International travel would be practically impossible. Guardianship may prevent me from giving the guardian the health certificates and paperwork necessary for the animal to travel.
Well, what should I do? It seems like being the owner of my puppy is the best option, but I'm scared of not having the right treatment option available in the future because I didn't choose to be the guardian. And I'm also scared of not being able to afford treatment options, but being forced to pay.
I believe and have seen firsthand from the people that come into my clinic that they don't treat their pets as property, but more like family. Just from you asking these questions and being so curious about the legal aspect and deciding what you should do makes me already believe that you are a good person who doesn't think of your dog as property. You taking the time to seek out this information and wanting to be more informed already means that you are actively taking a role in finding the best animal welfare options you can provide for your new dog. I have also seen how well you take care of your other animals over the years, as you have been a client here. I know you love your animals and you make the best decisions for them.
Thank you. That's so kind of you to say. You're right. I don't think of him as property, I just wanted to be more educated about the legal aspects and more about the difference between supporting animal rights or animal welfare. After speaking with you, Khalil, and the animal rights activists, I finally feel informed enough to make this decision.
Oh, what decision did you make?
I'm going to choose to be the owner of my dog.
Oh, good.
I've come to realize after talking to you, Khalil, and the animal rights activists that I do love and respect my dog and don't view him as property, but the legal ramifications to being a guardian are unnecessary and don't provide any benefits to me. I'm still afraid of being forced to do something against my will just because I filed to be the guardian. I know I will take care of him as a family member without the unnecessary title of guardian.
I think you're making a good decision. I know you'll treat him right and be an amazing owner.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your day to ease my worries and answer all of the questions I had.
It was my pleasure. And you can always come to me with any questions you have about your animals. Now, let's start your pup's exam.